My boyfriend texted me at work like it was the most normal thing in the world. "I'm bringing my ex to your family's Thanksgiving," he wrote. "She has nowhere to go. Deal with it." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, like my eyes were trying to deny what my brain had already understood. The office around me kept moving, keyboards clicking, someone laughing by the coffee machine, but my chest went tight and still. I typed back with thumbs that suddenly felt too heavy. "I'll let them know." He replied with heart emojis. "Knew you'd understand, babe." Understand. Not ask. Not talk. Not even, "Are you okay with this?" Just a demand wrapped in cute little red icons. My hands were calm, but I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. I could almost hear my mother's voice from every past holiday. How proud she sounded introducing him. How she'd squeezed my shoulder like she was already imagining wedding photos. Future son-in-law, she'd called him. My family had made it clear. This year mattered. I didn't text my family that he was bringing his ex. I texted them something else. "Hey, Mom," I wrote. Something came up with a work emergency. Server migration over the holiday weekend. I won't make it to Thanksgiving. He might still come, though. She replied fast, like she always did. "Oh, honey, that's awful. But he's still welcome, of course. We already bought his favorite wine." The word wine sat there like punctuation, like a period at the end of a sentence I didn't remember agreeing to. Then I did the thing I'd been fantasizing about for months, back when easygoing became another word for she'll swallow it. I opened my laptop. I booked a 5-day trip to Cancun, Wednesday night to Sunday. I used the money I'd been saving for his Christmas gift, the one he'd been hinting about like it was inevitable. And then I watched his messages roll in like waves, each one more confident than the last. Tuesday, what should she wear? Casual or dress up? Wednesday morning, picking up the pies. Wednesday afternoon, why aren't you answering? Wednesday evening, your phone must be dead. See you there. I didn't answer, because he told me to deal with it. So I did. When I met him 2.5 years ago, I remember thinking how safe he felt. We met through friends, one of those casual, no-pressure dinners where everyone talks over each other and nobody expects anything meaningful to happen. He sat across from me, smiling softly, listening more than he spoke. When I talked, he leaned in. When I laughed, his eyes stayed on my face like he was memorizing it. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't dramatic, and after a string of relationships that felt like emotional obstacle courses, that felt like relief. We moved slowly. Coffee dates turned into shared grocery lists, weekend plans turned into family holidays. By the second Thanksgiving, my mom was already setting an extra place at the table without asking. "This one feels different," she'd whispered to me in the kitchen, handing me a dish towel. "He respects you." I believed that. He fit into my family easily. My dad liked his quiet confidence. My sister teased him like he'd always been there. He learned everyone's preferences fast. Who liked dark meat, who hated small talk, who needed space after wine. He brought wine every time, always the right kind. And I tried to be the girlfriend who made things easy. I didn't make a fuss when plans changed last minute. I didn't complain when he spent long nights on his phone, laughing softly at messages he said were just from friends. I trusted him when he told me his ex, the one he'd dated for 4 years, was still around because they'd ended on good terms and shared a friend group. "She's been through a lot," he'd said once, shrugging. "Mental health stuff, family drama." I nodded. Compassion was important. I wanted to be mature, secure, not that girlfriend. But over time, her name started appearing more often. Casual mentions at first. "She texted me today. She's having a rough week. She doesn't really have anyone else." And always, threaded underneath, the same implication. I'm the strong one. I can handle it. The thing is, I was easygoing. I did handle things. I adapted. I smoothed edges. I swallowed discomfort and called it growth. What I didn't notice, until much later, was how often my comfort came last. How weekends became plans he'd already agreed to. How dinners turned into compromises I didn't remember negotiating. How my family's warmth started being treated like a shared resource he could offer up when it suited him. Still, I stayed, because nothing had exploded yet. Because on the surface, everything looked fine. And because every time I hesitated, every time a quiet warning flickered in my chest, I told myself the same thing. Don't overreact, don't be insecure, don't ruin something good. By the time the Thanksgiving text came, the pattern was already there. I just hadn't named it yet. Looking back, the warning signs didn't arrive with sirens. They slipped in quietly, soft enough to ignore, polite enough to excuse. The first shift I noticed wasn't about her, it was about him. He started being distracted in a way that felt deliberate, not secretive exactly, just angled away. His phone was always nearby, face down, screen lighting up more often than before. When it buzzed, he'd glance, then hesitate, like he was deciding how much of himself to pull out of the moment we were in. Sometimes he'd smile at the screen and quickly smooth his face before I could ask why. "Work stuff?" I'd say. "Yeah," he'd reply, or "just someone having a rough day." Someone. I didn't push. I'd built my identity in this relationship around being reasonable, calm, secure. The girlfriend who didn't interrogate tone shifts or count notifications. Still, patterns have a way of stacking themselves. He began canceling plans more often, not dramatically, just enough to blur the edges of expectation. A movie night turned into a rain check. A Sunday brunch became maybe next weekend. Each time there was a reason. Someone needed advice. Someone was spiraling. Someone had no one else. And I noticed how often that someone was the same person. "She's just going through it," he said once, rubbing his face like the weight of her problems physically sat there. "I don't know what I'd do if I didn't check in." The words sounded noble, responsible, caring, but something about them left me feeling oddly displaced. I started catching myself adjusting automatically, lowering my expectations, rearranging my schedule, shrinking my needs to make room for his availability to everyone else. It wasn't something he demanded outright. It was something he seemed to assume would happen. And because nothing was explicitly wrong, I kept agreeing. There were moments, small and sharp, when my instincts tried to speak up. Like the night we were at dinner with friends and someone joked about how close he still was with his past. He laughed it off easily. I laughed too, half a beat later. I felt it then, the way laughter can echo hollow when it doesn't come from the same place. Or the time he said casually, "You're just really understanding. That's why this works." It sounded like a compliment. It didn't feel like one. Understanding had quietly become my role, my contribution, my obligation. I didn't realize how uneven things had become because nothing had forced the imbalance into the open yet. There had been no explosion, no confrontation, no moment dramatic enough to justify drawing a line. Just a slow, steady erosion of the space where my voice should have been. So when that message came days later, out of nowhere, unapologetic, already decided, it didn't create the problem. It revealed it. It showed me exactly how he saw me, not as a partner to consult, but as someone who would deal with it. The text came while I was at work, middle of the afternoon, middle of a normal day, middle of a life I thought was stable. My phone buzzed against my desk, and when I glanced down, I saw his name. I almost ignored it. Another meeting reminder, another casual check-in. Nothing about the moment warned me that something fundamental was about to crack. "I'm bringing my ex to your family's Thanksgiving," the message read. "She has nowhere to go. Deal with it." I reread it, once, twice, a third time, slower. There was no question mark, no hesitation, no, "Are you okay with this?" Just a decision. Already made, already delivered. My throat went dry. I could hear my own breathing suddenly, shallow and uneven, like my body had recognized the threat before my mind had caught up. Around me, the office hummed. Someone rolled a chair back. Someone else laughed softly. But I felt sealed off, suspended in a quiet pocket of disbelief. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I typed back, "I'll let them know." The words looked calm, reasonable, neutral. They hid everything I didn't know how to say. Almost instantly, he replied with heart emojis. "Knew you'd understand, babe." That word, understand, sat heavy in my chest. Because understanding, apparently, meant compliance. It meant swallowing discomfort without discussion. It meant absorbing the impact of his choices so he wouldn't have to feel it himself. I didn't tell my family he was bringing his ex. Instead, I told them something else entirely. "Hey, Mom," I texted. Something came up with a work emergency. Server migration over the holiday weekend. I won't make it to Thanksgiving. He might still come, though. The reply came quickly. "Oh, honey, that's awful. But he's still welcome, of course. We already bought his favorite wine." I closed my eyes for a moment after reading it. The image hit me all at once. My mom setting the table, placing that bottle down like punctuation at the end of a sentence she thought was written in stone. My absence already being smoothed over, my place quietly filled. And in that moment, something in me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just decisively. I opened my laptop, my hands were steady, my heart was not. I went to a travel site and booked a 5-day trip to Cancun, Wednesday night to Sunday. Beachfront hotel. Non-refundable. I used the money I'd been saving for his Christmas gift, the designer item he'd been casually hinting about for weeks, like it was already his. Once the confirmation email landed in my inbox, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly, more like clarity. Then I turned off my phone's read receipts, and I watched. The messages started coming in over the next few days, each one more confident than the last, like my silence was just a technical issue that would resolve itself. Tuesday. What should she wear, casual or dressy? Wednesday morning, picking up the pies. Wednesday afternoon, why aren't you answering? Wednesday evening, your phone must be dead. See you there. I didn't respond. By Wednesday night, I was on a plane. The hum of the engines felt like distance being manufactured in real time. By the time I landed, the air was warm, heavy with salt, and my phone buzzed nonstop in my bag like something alive and angry. I didn't check it. Thanksgiving morning, I sat on a balcony overlooking the ocean. Sunlight hit the water in sharp, blinding flashes. Somewhere far away, my family was setting the table. Somewhere closer, he was walking into their house without me. At 2 p.m., my phone lit up again. That was when the storm hit. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't standing in it. I was watching it form, from very far away. I didn't read the messages right away. That was the strange part. My phone kept lighting up on the small table beside the lounge chair, vibrating against glass like it was desperate to be noticed. I could see the screen flash, his name, again and again, but I let it sit there, face down, soaking in heat and sunlight. The ocean moved steadily in front of me, indifferent and endless. Waves rose, collapsed, and erased themselves like they'd never existed. I focused on that rhythm, on my breath, on the way my shoulders slowly unclenched as the hours passed. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that for the first time, I wasn't rushing to manage someone else's emotions before I'd even named my own. When I finally picked up my phone later that evening, the number at the top of the screen made me pause. 73 messages. I scrolled, not reading at first, just watching the timestamps pile up, watching urgency turn into confusion, confusion into panic. When I started reading, I did it slowly, deliberately, like I was studying evidence instead of reliving a memory. Where are you? Your mom says you're not coming. She said you have to work. You didn't tell me. I'm here alone. This is so embarrassing. Your dad asked if I was your girlfriend. Your sister is giving me death stares. Answer your phone. I felt a flicker of something sharp in my chest. Not guilt, not regret, recognition. This was the consequence he hadn't accounted for. The moment his certainty met reality. As the messages continued, the tone shifted. I could hear it even without his voice. The pivot from confusion to blame. Your mom wants to know why you didn't tell me. I had to explain. Now she's asking why my ex is here. I told them you said it was fine. Your dad looks pissed. This is your fault. I exhaled slowly, the sound almost lost under the surf. He told them I said it was fine. Of course he did. Because that version protected him. It painted me as informed, agreeable, part of a plan I'd never signed off on. I didn't reply. I didn't correct the record. I didn't jump in to smooth things over like I always had. Instead, I set my phone down and watched the sky darken, streaked pink and orange like it was performing just for me. Sunday night, I flew home. I didn't tell him I was back. I unpacked quietly, washed the salt out of my hair, folded clothes that smelled like sunscreen and distance. Then, on impulse, I posted a single photo to Instagram, a sunset over water, no people in frame. Sometimes you need to step back to see things clearly. He saw it within minutes. The calls started immediately. I let them ring. Once, twice, 4 times. On the 5th call, I answered. Where were you? He demanded, voice already raised. Are you kidding me right now? Cancun, I said calmly. Great trip. How was Thanksgiving? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, like he'd been slapped. You left me alone, he snapped. With my ex, at your family's house. I told you I'd let them know, I replied. That's not what you meant, he shot back. You said you'd tell them she was coming. No, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. You said she was coming and told me to deal with it. So I did. Silence. Then anger, rushing in to fill the space. You humiliated me. No, I said. You humiliated yourself when you showed up with your ex without actually asking me. You're unbelievable, he said. You ran away instead of dealing with things like an adult. Adults don't ambush their partners with their exes, I replied. Adults have conversations. Adults respect boundaries. He went quiet again. When he spoke, his voice was smaller. My family probably thinks I'm trash now. What did you expect? I asked. You replaced me at my own family's table. He hung up on me. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel the urge to chase the silence. I felt clear, like something that had been twisted out of shape for a long time had finally snapped into place. I thought the call would be the worst of it. I was wrong. Monday morning, I was halfway through getting ready for work when there was a knock at my door. Not polite, not hesitant, sharp and impatient, like whoever was on the other side already felt entitled to be let in. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. He had a key. I'd forgotten about that. The lock turned, the door opened a few inches, and stopped when the chain caught. "Let me in," he said, frustration already thick in his voice. "We need to talk." "We are talking," I replied, standing on the other side of the door in my robe, arms folded, heart steady. "This works." "Stop being ridiculous." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "I'm being ridiculous? You told me your ex was coming to my family's Thanksgiving and ordered me to deal with it." "I was trying to be a good friend," he shot back. "She's been through hell." "And what about being a good boyfriend to me?" I asked. "What about my family?" "You abandoned me," he said, voice rising. "You left me there alone." "You replaced me," I replied, "at my own family's dinner table." That landed. I could hear it in the way his breathing changed. He tried a different angle. "You don't understand," he said, softer now. "She's been through so much. Her stepmom accused her of stealing. Her dad took the stepmom's side. She has no one." "Still not my problem." "You're heartless," he snapped. "No," I said, "I have boundaries." That was when he said the thing that finally stripped away any lingering doubt. "My family thinks I'm trash now." "Yeah," I said, "they do." There was a pause, then his voice cracked, not with sadness, but with panic. "How could you do this to me?" I leaned my forehead lightly against the door, feeling the cool wood ground me. "You did this to yourself," I said. "You made a unilateral decision about my family. You told me to deal with it like my opinion didn't matter. So I dealt with it by removing myself from a situation you created without my consent." He stood there for a long moment. Then he left. I thought that might be the end. It wasn't even close. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. My mom's name lit up the screen. "We need to talk about him," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. She told me everything. How he'd shown up with his ex at 1 p.m, smiling, carrying pies like they were entitled to be there. How my mom had opened the door expecting just him, and then frozen. "Oh," she'd said, "who's this?" "This is my ex," he had apparently replied. I mean, my friend. The confusion, the awkward recovery, the way the math hadn't added up when he said I knew they were coming, but also that I wasn't coming myself. My dad, polite but cold, asking questions. Too many questions. "So you're unemployed, couch surfing, 4 years together? Why'd you break up?" "He cheated." That detail, my mom told me, had come out later, casually, like it was a footnote instead of a character reference. Then there was my aunt, wine in hand, filter gone. "So," she'd said brightly, "you brought your ex to meet your current girlfriend's family, but your current girlfriend isn't here. That's interesting." I could picture it all too clearly. The tight smiles, the sideways glances, the way my family closed ranks without needing to say a word. "They stayed 2 hours," my mom said. "He kept checking his phone. She looked like she might cry." Good. But that wasn't the end either. Because once he realized he'd lost control of the narrative at my family's house, he tried to reclaim it everywhere else. He called my mom directly, tried to explain, tried to apologize, tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. She shut him down. "There was no miscommunication. You lied. Bringing your ex without clearing it was disrespectful. And frankly, after meeting her, I understand why her family wants nothing to do with her." He hung up on my mother. Then came social media, a carefully crafted post about compassion, about insecurity, about being interrogated by her family while I was nowhere to be found. Friends chimed in with sympathy, with comments about how men deserve better, about how women can't handle things professionally. My sister saw it. She commented once, "Compassionate? You brought your ex to someone else's family dinner without permission." She wasn't insecure. She was smart. The comment was deleted. Screenshots were not. Then his ex messaged me directly. "Girl, what you did was messed up," she wrote. "He was just trying to help me, and you made it weird. Grow up." I stared at the message for a moment before replying. The unemployed woman who ate 3 plates of my family's food is telling me to grow up. Maybe focus on getting your life together instead of texting your ex's girlfriend. She blocked me. Good. By the end of the week, he was calling my work, showing up unannounced, leaving voicemails that swung wildly between apology and accusation. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, I realized something unsettlingly calm. This wasn't escalation because he loved me. It was escalation because he was losing control. And people who feel entitled don't let go quietly. The shift didn't come with closure. It came with receipts. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, the noise finally slowed. The calls stopped. The drive-bys ended. The silence felt tentative, like the pause after a storm when you're not sure if another wave is coming. Then an email landed in my personal inbox. Long, dense, carefully formatted, like a legal brief written by someone who confused intensity with logic. He wrote about how I'd ruined his reputation, how I'd turned my family against him, how I'd chosen blood over love like it was some kind of moral failure. He wrote about how unfair it was that I'd disappeared, how humiliating it had been for him to face questions alone. Then came the invoice. Thanksgiving pies, $60. Gas to drive to my parents' house, $20. Emotional distress, significant. No dollar amount, just an expectation. I stared at the screen, something in me finally settling into place. This wasn't heartbreak. This was entitlement. I replied with exactly one thing. A Venmo request for $90, the commission I'd lost by taking PTO for my Cancun trip. He blocked me, and that was it. That was the moment the fog lifted. Over the next few days, the truth finished surfacing. Quietly, inevitably, like sediment settling at the bottom of a glass. Mutual friends started reaching out. Not dramatically, not with gossip, just checking in. One dinner, I heard later, had been organized so he could explain his side. According to the people who were there, it didn't go the way he hoped. Someone asked the question I'd been waiting for. Wait, a friend said slowly. You brought your ex without asking her first? He tried to explain. Compassion, holidays, no one else to go to. Another woman shook her head. That's insane. I'd have dumped you too. Half the table nodded. The rest went quiet. No one defended the decision. Even his closest defender admitted later, privately, that maybe, just maybe, bringing his ex to someone else's family Thanksgiving hadn't been the best move. As for the ex, she posted a vague Instagram story about knowing your worth and not letting others dim your light. I laughed out loud when I saw it. You don't crash someone else's family holiday and call it self-actualization. 2 weeks later, it slipped out that they were together again. Or maybe they never stopped being together. I didn't ask, I didn't care. What mattered was the clarity. The way everything lined up in hindsight, the late-night messages, the constant crises, the assumption that I'd bend because I always had. The story he'd been telling himself had finally collapsed under the weight of reality. And in its place, something steadier took root in me. Boundaries weren't cruelty. Distance wasn't abandonment. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was self-respect. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped drafting imaginary responses, stopped wondering if I could have said something differently to make him understand. Because understanding had never been the issue. Control had. And once I named that, its power evaporated. I slept better. I laughed more easily. The tightness in my chest faded until one day I realized it was gone. I hadn't won. I'd reclaimed myself. And that was enough. The consequences didn't explode. They rippled. Slowly, publicly, permanently. Once the story stopped being controlled by him, it began moving on its own. Through family group chats, through mutual friends, through the quiet recalibrations people make when they realize someone isn't who they presented themselves to be. My sister filled in the details I hadn't asked for. Apparently, the Thanksgiving had already become legend. The year your boyfriend brought his ex, she said dryly over the phone. That's how everyone refers to it now. My cousin turned it into a Twitter thread. 50,000 likes, screenshots, commentary. A parade of strangers unanimously agreeing that bringing an ex to your partner's family holiday without asking was unhinged behavior. My parents didn't revel in it, but they didn't defend him either. My mom stopped calling him by name. He became that tacky one. My dad upgraded it to leftover boy on account of the 3 containers of food his ex had taken home. They didn't say it angrily. They said it like a conclusion. He tried, quietly at first, to regain footing. He messaged mutual friends asking how I was, asked whether I'd calmed down, asked if anyone thought I'd be open to talking again. No one volunteered to be the messenger. He attempted one last narrative shift, telling people I was too close to my family, that I'd chosen them over him like it was some kind of betrayal, that I'd humiliated him by disappearing instead of having an adult conversation. The problem was the facts didn't bend. He brought his ex. He didn't ask. He told me to deal with it. Every version of the story that omitted those details collapsed on contact. The friend group split, not explosively, just naturally. Half of them drifted away from him. The rest stayed neutral. No one defended the choice outright. Even his loudest supporter admitted, eventually, that it probably wasn't his finest decision. As for his ex, she moved in with him. A detail that reached me through the grapevine like an aftershock. The same studio apartment he'd always complained was too small for one person. Apparently it fit two just fine. That was when I stopped wondering whether Thanksgiving had been a test. It had been, and I'd failed it by not folding. The strangest fallout, though, wasn't his. It was mine. For weeks I kept bracing for regret, for loneliness, for the ache people warn you about when you walk away from something familiar. It didn't come. Instead, I noticed space. Evenings where my phone didn't buzz with crisis. Weekends that belonged to me. Decisions that didn't require pre-approval, disguised as compromise. I started saying no faster, saying yes more intentionally. At work, my focus sharpened. A week after everything settled, I updated my LinkedIn. New title, new responsibilities. Senior systems analyst. Something I'd earned quietly while managing chaos I hadn't caused. A notification popped up days later. Profile viewed, then viewed again an hour later. By him, then by her. I smiled and closed the app. Christmas passed. My mom texted me, "Just family this year, right?" Then added, "Unless you want to bring someone appropriate." I laughed out loud. At dinner, my sister raised her glass. 2 boundaries. Everyone clinked. Even my grandmother, 80 years old, sharp as ever, lifted her wine and said, "That girl had nerve, but our girl had more." And in that moment, I felt it fully. The fallout hadn't damaged me. It had clarified everything. Who stood with me? Who tried to rewrite reality? Who expected accommodation without accountability? The people who mattered were still there. The rest had removed themselves. That was the consequence he never planned for. By the time the dust settled, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't replaying conversations in the shower or drafting imaginary replies in my head. I wasn't checking my phone to see if he regretted anything. The silence he left behind didn't feel empty. It felt spacious. That Cancun trip did more than give me a tan. It gave me distance. And in that distance, I finally saw how much I'd been tolerating just to keep the peace. How often I'd confused being understanding with being erased. A few weeks after New Year's, I started seeing someone new. Nothing dramatic, no rushing, no promises made too early. I met him at the gym. Quick smiles, casual conversations between sets, the kind of ease that didn't demand anything from me. When the Thanksgiving story came up, he laughed so hard he had to steady himself on the treadmill. "Wait," he said. "He actually brought his ex to your family's Thanksgiving without asking you?" "Yep." He shook his head, still smiling. "That's not compassion. That's unhinged." I asked him what he would have done. "Same as you," he said without hesitation. "Except I would have gone to Europe. Cancun's too close." I think that's when I knew I'd keep seeing him. Not because he was perfect, but because he listened. Because he asked questions instead of making assumptions. Because he didn't treat access to my life like something he was entitled to. Looking back, the relationship didn't end because he brought his ex to Thanksgiving. It ended because of 3 words. Deal with it. Those words told me everything I needed to know about how he saw me. Not as a partner, but as a buffer. Someone whose job was to absorb discomfort so he wouldn't have to. If you're in a situation like this, hear this clearly. When someone shows you they don't respect your boundaries, believe them the first time. Don't argue, don't negotiate, don't wait for them to change. Protect yourself. He told me to deal with it. So I did, just not the way he expected. As for him and his ex, they can spend every Thanksgiving together now, crammed into that tiny studio apartment, eating takeout, because he can't cook and she burns water. That's what we call a happy ending. If you've ever had your boundaries dismissed, your family treated as optional, or your comfort framed as an inconvenience, this story was for you. Thank you to everyone who listened, who shared similar experiences, and who supports stories about choosing self-respect over silence. If this resonated, leave a comment and tell me what you would have done. Share it with someone who might need the reminder. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about love, betrayal, and finding your way back to yourself. Sometimes walking away isn't losing. It's finally winning.